Try again. All right.
Oh shit.
Oh. Well, everyone, looks like we might be live, but I don't see an intro video playing. Let's see here.
Unload our pre-show.
We are
live.
Right?
Everything's
well,
loaded.
Hello, everybody. Looks like we have an error with our intro stream here today. I'm trying to get this intro stream in place, so you get a little bonus behind-the-scene view here.
Surprise!
Looks like it doesn't let me add it while we're going there. It looks like, unless you have a video you can throw in here. Luke, can you help me out here? Can you throw that
I'm
video?
looking. Where our intro and outro is already set.
Yeah, can we just play the intro over top? Here we go.
We could.
The first 3 weeks of the eruption here in Hawaii, crazy things would happen in the middle of the night. A new fissure would open up and it would threaten a new neighborhood. Thousands of people were evacuated from their homes. I started the Hawaii Tracker Facebook group to help people understand what's going on and get their questions answered.
Hey, how's it going? We're live. This is Fissure 20.
We had hundreds of people all throughout the neighborhoods sending in videos, articles, and images. We spent a lot of time making sure the accurate information gets out.
This is live. Still lava moving.
They weren't just sharing a story, they were helping their neighbor. If a family was being evacuated, my group would just jump in and help out. It was huge. They were watching out for each other.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you for the support from everybody.
As we go through this, we're growing closer together as a community. When tragedies like this strike, you really realize how much you need each other.
We are the Hawaiian Volcano Education and Resilience Institute, HVERI for short. A lot of people know us from the 2018 eruption of Kilauea in the Lower East Rift Zone. Working under Hawaii Tracker on the Facebook group. Since then, we've been trying to carry on and take the lessons, the hard lessons that were learned during that eruption, and try and prepare for the next major disaster that comes to our island.
Yeah, so we do that through two different programs. One is volcano education, and the other part is digital resilience, which we address through online groups on social media. So the way the two programs work together is that the social media networks end up being a distribution pathway for all the information. And having that network in place means we can provide more than just volcano education, but any other preparedness information as well.
What we were working for really came about in the Mauna Loa eruption in 2022. Within hours of that eruption starting, we had the mayor, Mitch Roth, we had USGS HVO Ken Hahn on the stream trying to help flush out a little bit of the ongoing because it's so new. It's completely different from our previous major eruption, which was 2018.
One of the things that Talmadge and I were talking about was how do we deal with social media? It was something we needed to figure out and get right. Our job is to get information to the public and make sure that the public get it as well as possible and as correctly as possible. When Philip and Dan started coming to and live streaming the meetings, it was great because we were reaching more people than we normally would. So when the eruption actually happened, we had this relationship. The interviews we did during the eruption, the most fun ones were the ones with Philip and Dave because they were more relaxed, and we knew we were getting to the local community, and people were asking questions. So those were the best, I think. I just want to really give a shout out to those guys and how we worked as a team on this eruption. It really worked out well, and we got to a lot of people we wouldn't have normally got.
Aloha, everyone, and welcome to our Hawaiian Volcano Tracker. Today is Thursday, October 2nd, 2025. Kilauea has had her episode 34 this past week, so we will recap that for the most part and have some special content for you guys today. How are you doing today, Dane? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so we're going to go over the latest on Pohoiki, but as a special today, we're going to talk about the Napau eruption, which happened just over a year ago. Short eruption, but when the return of lava to the Upper East Rift Zone, first since the 2018 eruption. So it could be good to revisit it.
Yeah, awesome. How's your week been?
Busy, very busy. I have some stuff from even this morning lined up in the bit we're going to talk about on Pohoiki. So a lot going on down there, but a lot going on with the volcano and, just other things as well.
All right, so we'll dig into all our community happenings here as well as the volcano and get into our regular lineup here, huh? So as usual, if you guys have any questions, hit up Dane and Lou in the chat. We'll be collecting questions, directing discussion there. We'll try to step through our paces here, and let's start with our summary.
All right.
Just a second to get a, there we go. And this, all right. And one more thing, or a little bit adapting here today because of some issues on the back end, but here we go. All right. Aloha, everyone, and welcome to our Hawaiian Volcano Summary for October 2nd, 2025. Episode 34 became a highlight of Kilauea's ongoing summit eruption with the return of double fountains from both the north and south vents. The south vent set a record for the highest lava fountain in over 9 months of eruption thus far, reaching over 1,300 feet or 400 meters by USGS estimates, with the north vent shooting still inclined to the north here, and the south vent shooting vertically much higher into the sky and setting the record for the highest fountain. That was a V1 camera. You guys saw the time lapse for there. Here is the V3 from the reverse angle with the onset of the north fountain first and the south vent fountain shooting up off the screen here. We can note that there were over 48 hours, maybe 50 hours of precursory overflows from the north vent, over 110 overflows reported, slowing down before the main onset of vigorous activity. So you can see there the two vents and the degassing that's come into place since then. Looking from the V2 camera placed near the volcano house, this is a view for most visitors looking at the eruption. You could clearly see the height of the high fountain above the back rim of the crater lit up by the light of the glow. And moving on, we have the K2 camera, which is from the Wikahuna overlook, where visitors may have been able to even look upwards the fountain, that record high fountain, from that closest viewpoint there. Lava flows from both vents traveled across the crater floor. And here you see the two flows, and made it all the way across to this far eastern side, not quite to the crater rim, but resulting in major coverage of the crater floor during this episode. In the thermal view, you can see this a little bit better. Precursor overflows coming first, and then lava flows coming next. The gas emissions from this event largely blew upwards through a fairly still lower atmosphere, with the lower atmosphere impacts coming to the southwest over the Ka'u Desert and the closed area of Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. But as you can see in this time lapse, the upper level winds brought a lot of that fog across the top of the island, even if it was not impactful for the people living on the ground. And the best view of that is from this Mauna Kea camera, which captures the onset of eruption at night. And as day breaks, you can see this big cloud of fog, which then blows away after sunrise. That is a little reminiscent of the Mauna Loa eruption back in 2022. The satellite capture shows the SO2 cloud over the south part of Kilauea and then being blown to the north over time. On the ground, conditions are pretty good. This Citizen Science Monitoring Network data from Purple Air can show us that there are low values across the island here. And there they are. Our ground tilt, which dropped in a regular pattern during the episode 34, has begun to recover in its typical rate, suggesting that another episode is likely to occur. But because it's been so soon following the recent episode, there is not a lot of data to make a prediction, with the USGS indicating that another fountain episode is possible, but likely more than a week away. As you see here, there has been a lapse in appropriations from the USGS. They continue to maintain monitoring networks and issue updates and notifications of activity, but other parts of the website may not be updated and may become outdated over time. That said, they are reporting fountain heights and volumes, and so we can see here that episode 34 had the highest fountain thus far, following a series of 5 fountains that were lower than the previous bunch. And the discharge rate of this eruption was a record high, combining both the north and south vents to about 400 cubic meters per second, or 500 cubic yards per second, which is more than double, or about double the highest rates we've seen through 9 months thus far. The volume erupted was similar to what we've seen recently at 9 million cubic meters. So if we have the same amount of volume at twice the rate, that is why the eruption lasted half as long as usual. This episode, I should say, of the eruption lasting only 6 hours for number 34. That's the summary for Kilauea. Just note for Mauna Loa, we have had a new USGS monthly update issued with the volcano still at alert level normal, color code green. Earthquake rates are relatively constant compared to last month, and the volcano continues to refill with minor inflation beneath the summit in a pattern that's established since the 2022 eruption as magma replenishes a reservoir system. And that's our Hawaiian volcano summary for this week. So let's move on to our volcanic hazard summary, the gas. All right, window up here, and we'll start off with some time lapses here as well. I thought I'd play this one again, the K2 camera that's showing the Uikahuna overlook up at the summit in the national park, where you can get really close and feel the rumble moving through your body because the fountain is so close, and feel the heat. And when I was there maybe a month ago and looking at the fountain was above the rim, but it wasn't neck-breakingly high, which this one here looked like it was really impressive had you been one of the people lucky enough to be standing there during that event. So that's the K2. Back to the KP camera on the side of Mauna Loa looking south. You can see low-level trade winds the evening before the eruption begins. You can see much of that cloud coming up into the air, and then once the eruption is past its prime and the gassing continues, you can see more of the trade wind direction blowing that fume to the southwest with continuing variable winds. We talked about variable winds occurring last week. and they are still ongoing a little bit this week. Light winds and fortunately not so much on the ground, but it is higher elevations like this camera blowing that fog across where it's visible. So again, the Mauna Kea camera, I thought this was pretty good. Let's put this on a loop here. So when it first comes up, let me see if I can pause this frame right in here. When you see this force of eruption of Kilauea, you see that rising upwards, hits this upper atmosphere and this fans out. Look at that big fan. You can see somewhat going across Mauna Loa a little bit, but still higher up than the mountain. Here's 14,000 feet, and you see this cloud is quite a bit above that still. So really interesting dispersion, and thankfully not a whole lot of impacts on the ground as far as I have heard. If you guys know differently, Dane and Lou, you guys can jump in here as well.
I do have something. I just put it in the chat, but it is relevant. It was some Pele's hair that had been blowing into, what is it, La Mau Mau? La Mau Mau. I'm not sure where that is exactly, but it was posted to Tracker earlier.
Yeah, Hawaiian Ranchos, that's south of Ocean View.
Okay, that's there.
So interesting. Yeah.
And that's a hefty little ball there. Like,
yeah, it is. Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully they're holding that very gingerly so that they're not rubbing those bits of glass into their fingers. Yeah.
They said that they put it into
really
a jar for memories at this point.
Perfect. Yeah. Just don't shake the jar. That's my advice.
That's the most in terms of impacts. Is like, wow, that's kind of impressive that far, that much. But with that big of fountains, it kind of makes sense that Pele's hair was getting all the way to Ocean View area.
Yeah, and we've seen some reports of impacts like that before, where especially with those really tall plumes that really light Pele's hair and those really small materials can get carried a long way away. I think we've heard about them falling as far as Miloli'i, perhaps, from this area. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. Fantastic. So, maybe further away, the lighter stuff falling down, but thankfully the closer part of the on-the-ground impact is in a closed area of the national park, and so that by itself does limit the potential impacts. Right?
And we appreciate the post to Hawaii Tracker. That's a great post right there.
Yeah, a good example of how we crowdsource our information. What's that?
Right. So wear gloves next time.
Yeah. That'll pop up in the comments, right? That's how you learn about how this stuff actually affects us. So, okay, turning to the Mauna Loa camera. Here it is, looking across all of Mokuaweo'oweo, and Kilauea is back over here. You can see the glow, and you can see as it sunrises. Maybe I'll try to pause this one as well. Let's see here, where you can see, right at sunrise, a little more of this big cloud of fog that's sitting above the summit. And as the sun rises and the winds start moving, you can actually see some of this fog blow across the camera here, right there, at the summit of Mauna Loa. So interesting. It could have been at Mauna Loa summit and smelled the fog from Kilauea, but on the ground at Kilauea, not so much. So that's the main impact of the gases. We do have our citizen science monitoring network once again on the ground, and maybe now this will load a little faster for me, or not. But let's force it here. This is people who have monitoring instruments on our houses and are feeding this data back into this website so that all of us can, as a community, be aware of what they're like on our island and the country, in fact. But really useful for us here. You can see everything is in the green. There are some elevated values here in the South Kona, Central Kona area. And we can look at those and see the history that there have been variations of perhaps some fog coming across through time, but not at super intense levels, right? But it's quite common that we see that fog wrap around Mauna Loa and get caught in the upper slopes of Kona here. Unfortunately, I do not have the VMAP project page. It does not seem to be operational when I was trying it earlier today. But because the main phase of the episode is over, we can expect lower level gases and more of our typical impacts from fog that we are used to island-wide. The State of Hawaii Air Quality Data Site is also loading. And it's also showing everything in the green here. And so this is across all different pollutant types, looking decent out there. And closer into the volcano at the national park, look at the national park website, everything is in the green as well, with the plume blowing currently to the southwest at about 7 miles an hour or so. And everything in the green. We can come back to our charts on the national park page and see that everything for the last 24 hours has also been across the monitoring network here. But if I scroll all the way up, you might recall the national park is also a federal agency like the USGS. They also have now put up alerts on their site saying that their services may be limited or unavailable. I would expect, just like the USGS, the websites may not be as updated as frequently, perhaps. And certainly you want to be careful and be as informed as possible with what's available at the national park. So I'm sure we'll speak more on that later. Let's sticking with the gas now. We'll turn to our windy.com SO2 layer. This is another satellite integration of data. And here we can see the result of that massive cloud of SO2 that blew into the atmosphere above Hawaii. So it's lingering here. It's moving with all the winds all around here. And that's how it sits in the global context. Right now, here we are in big, or just underneath this big sulfur cloud in the middle of the Pacific. Then you see there are other parts of the world that have lots of that gas blowing around as well for various different sources and mechanisms. But ours is volcanic, and it's right here in the middle, clearly isolated for us to see. Finally, we'll turn to the Mounds project and look at their satellite captures. So I showed this in our summary right here, this most recent image capture from the last 24 hours, seeing this cloud of SO2, similar to what we saw in Windy, but that one snapshot in time where that started off blowing west and seems to have then wrapped north after the sunrise came and dispersed that gas. Moving back in time, not a whole lot of gas there. There is a trade wind pattern of low-level activity. That's likely what we're seeing now is something like this, with the fog blowing locally at lower intensity. Continuing back in time, there were some moments. Last week we mentioned variable winds. So here is a capture from likely the 26th here in Hawaii, showing mostly the Puna area impacted by that low-level fog. And if I go back the day before, we can see that that was when we updated you guys last week, showing this cloud more into the saddle region north of Kilauea, as the winds were becoming variable by that point already. So that's our hazard summary. Thankfully, there's not a whole lot right now, just the low-level gases coming out between the episodes, which hopefully everyone living on the island is prepared for and used to that pattern by now. So we'll move on to our visual observations. Starting with a thermal map that was released by the USGS last week of the previous episode, number 33, showing the two branches of flow. There was a northern branch lava flow and a southern branch lava flow here, and how they sit on top of the other still hot lava from earlier episodes as well that's sitting in there. It shows inactive, but clearly it's releasing heat. So the cap of rock above it is not that thick, you might imagine, where the heat's coming through. And we do see it moving a little bit as well as eruptions, as eruptive episodes occur and lava marches across the crater. We sometimes see this area kind of buckling and bulging upwards as the lava rolls across it. Kind of like rolling on a waterbed or something, right? It's liquid underneath, and so as you move the pressure, it can kind of cause this kind of buckling to occur. And I think this map shows through the heat exposed here how much thinner this eastern part may be than the central and western parts of the crater floor here. It's pretty interesting to note that. This was only additional image from a release last week that we covered. And there was an additional one released on the 25th, measuring the tephra cone changes at Kilauea Summit after episode 33. So they actually have here a couple of tire tracks marking the path of the former crater rim drive that's buried underneath all this fallout of tephra. There's chunks of lava rocks that have landed either still liquid or cooled midair and landed still hot but solid and broken into chunks. And so because of this whole process, the whole landscape's changed. You see all the trees are stripped of all their branches, and a lot of bark as well. You see these orange buckets placed in a line here across the landscape as they're trying to measure the accumulation for each episode, and eventually as well for the entire eruption as a whole, to see what the changes happen to be here. So a note there. Yeah, let's see, there's some caption information. Here they are again measuring. In this location, the caption notes that the tephra is over 5 feet thick, increasing to over 60 feet thick at the mound of tephra on the skyline over here. Or perhaps over here. And so yeah, and then we have a panoramic image taken from the top of this big hill, big mound of tephra. They note that this location where the photographer is standing is normally where the trade winds blow all the fume and all the fallout of lava when it's shooting in the air. That's why it's the highest point of land here. But during this particular day, there were southern winds blowing the plume away from this perspective, allowing this panoramic view. Very fascinating to see this. And that is how things sat before episode 34 began. And we'll turn to that now, looking at the V1 camera. And we'll pull us back to the 28th when we had the first overflows coming from the north vent. And you see here, we're just capturing a time lapse of a few of these, but the USGS reported over 100 overflows that first night, then 10 more, and then a gap where they seem to have stopped occurring. And then they began again. Eruption became continuous at what time was it? It was like 11:45 p.m. On Tuesday night. And after midnight is when it ramped up to its full vigorous fountains. Yeah, at 12:53 a.m. is when those high fountains began. And what you can see here, perhaps, is that whole sequence of the overflows, fountainings, and degassing. But let me zoom us into just the actual vigorous part of the eruption here. We can see the north fountain starts off strong, reaches its peak height just before the south fountain starts. As the south fountain takes over, the north fountain drops down in height. South fountain then stays high for a while before they both drop down towards the end here to wrap up the episode. So fascinating view there. We'll move to the V3 camera, where you see this initial view with lots of tephra on the ground. Remember, during the last episode, there were no flows from the south vent. So you see no lava flows on a landscape here. Instead, you see all the tephra that covers that area that was the result of the north vent spraying all over it the last time as well. So that's what I'm talking about right here, this really even landscape with no flows. Then we have the overflows beginning. Here they are coming out the bottom. Then the high fountains begin and come back. Yeah. So once again, let me zoom us into just the vigorous part of the eruption and slow down a little bit. You can see this south fountain is coming clearly off the screen. You can see the height of that back wall over there. See the inclination of the north fountain a little bit there, maybe 60 degrees still. You can see these two flows coming out, both from the north vent and from the south vent. Right? The south vent coming directly off of the vent itself, coming down. But also, you note this big spray landing on a crater wall, feeding a big flow that's adding to that, all coming down as well from that area. So this is all a result of, as we mentioned before, this about double the rate of lava coming out of the ground, right? It's coming out about twice as fast as we've seen at any point over the last 9.5 months. And that's leading to some faster dynamics and bigger flows and more areas covered all at once here. Look at that. That view is so much lava on the frame here compared to even some of the earlier episodes we've seen. Really a highlight of this eruption thus far. From the same perspective, we have the S2 camera. This one's a little interesting. So it's capturing a degassing, the glow beforehand. Something seems to come loose on this camera. I don't know if it's like a piece of tape or if maybe some chunk of tephra got stuck to it somehow. But what you start seeing is this dark flap coming in from the left here to obscure the view. And so there's some good frames in here, but just to show some of the hazards of and how challenging it can be to maintain equipment in an environment such as this. And so we can appreciate all the USGS efforts that this does not happen more often. Just wanted to point this out here that there are a lot of challenges to putting cameras up next to this spectacularly high fountaining, harsh conditions, remote areas. So that's the S2 camera. We'll wait. Hopefully someone will be able to go out there and repair this, although likely we'll not hear anyone talking about it since the USGS is not allowed to talk to anyone until the appropriations situation is resolved. So keep an eye out and we'll, I suppose, make our own captions for this camera. And so, okay, moving on from the S2, coming around to the V2 camera. This is the volcano house view. So that full sequence of overflows for the first couple of days with these flows coming out the north vent, down the ramp. Look at all the sulfur in the background growing up there with all the degassing. Then comes the high fountains. They last 6 hours, which is about half as long as we're used to nowadays, and shut off. But those 6 hours were quite intense. And once again, zooming into just that vigorous phase of the episode. This is my favorite view for seeing the height of the fountains. Let me see if I can pause this. Somewhere right in there, perhaps. It looks like the fountain is about in there, about that height to me, somewhere in there. You can clearly see the crater wall back here. Caldera wall is about that high. And so it's hard to really get a good measure. The USGS says 400 meters, 1,300 feet, which is the record. But I still feel a little bit of doubt and think that there's a possibility they may revise that number at some point. How we hear about that final number, I don't know. But it does look like there's a potential that it could have been a little bit higher than that based on these visuals right here.
It was like they couldn't, it was hard to tell the difference between what was wafting in the wind and what was still fountaining type of thing at the top. But it seems like a very conservative estimate to me of 13.
Yeah, I'm glad you say that too. Yeah, because yeah, it was really interesting. That south vent seemed like it was really narrow and shooting really high, and it was really bright, right? And perhaps it might have been more gas rich. It seemed like it was just really almost like jetting continuously, like really shoot that stuff so high in the air. And yeah, that meant there was a lot of gas mixed in there, and it was hard to tell that bright gas apart from the really bright lava when it's all mixed in and moving so fast. So absolutely.
Yeah.
I am curious about that. Maybe longer term, we'll hear about that published eventually. But yeah.
I was thinking 1,500 when I was looking at it, like without getting too crazy either. But it's very big, especially when you compare it to that back wall that we know somewhat of its height. That keeps changing little bits, but
yeah. Well, yeah. So maybe we can do it maybe by next week. We're not expecting an episode by next week. We can come back and revisit this, look at the previous reported heights of that back wall. Maybe we can do some calculations of our own here and make our own estimate as well, seeing as we may not get another one from USGS until that politics gets resolved. So moving on from that, and don't want to talk about politics. Yeah. We're here to talk about volcanoes. So let's move on to the K2 camera. This is that point of view at the former Jagger Museum. We can overlook. We can see the bathrooms over here, operational with the lights on and off. And yeah, really spectacular. Here you can see clearly the height of the crater rim and also the height of the fountain. And it seems like it's somewhere around in there. It's about as high as it gets right now. I know maybe around 3 a.m. might be the peak. Right in here. Then it seems to drop down a little bit more and more over time. So there's that screenshot I captured to start off and put it on top of how this looks from this point of view, 3 a.m. view of. See, so the gas is really bright. Maybe I might put the top of the fountain somewhere in here, but you can see it's clearly a little bit of a subjective process as well. All right, so continuing, the F1 camera shows us the advance of lava flows across the floor, starting with the overflow sequence that lasted, was 50 hours or so, feeding this little flow just in the northwest side of the crater floor. Most of those flows were short overflows and then into that big burst. And here you can see not only that first burst, but look, we have a big slumping of this flow underneath the cone as well here at the very end. That is continuing today. That last part of that movement is still happening today. So this has really been a 5-day process. Here is like the first couple of days of overflows from the north vent. Most of them very short, then the actual episode itself. And then here, still over the following couple of days, continuing movement of that hot mass that's forming that cone area, sliding downhill. And I wouldn't be surprised if even today or tonight you could see some incandescence, some glow, and possibly some small breakouts of lava from these areas that are still very bright and moving down the slope. The visible equivalent of that is a KW camera. There are those small overflows pumping out, little flows oozing across the there, this little Pohoiki lobes. That continues for day and night, and then in the middle of that next night, when overflows had slowed down quite a bit, we have the fountainings begin and putting lava across the floor to close to the far edge of the crater. All right, there's that overall sequence, and here you see that and the nighttime views with look at all that glow and incandescence of the flow moving. Remember, this is sped up, so any moment in time you might just see it looks like it's just sparkling out the edges and in the middle, but over time, very slowly, still oozing and moving down the slope, as you can see here. Focusing on that eruptive, vigorous part, and you can see those flows moving across the floor, fanning out in this western area, dividing. You see this north flow branch comes around, hits this north edge and wraps around to somewhere in the range over here, whereas south vent flow hits the southern edge of the crater wall and it's wrapping around from that direction over there. Yeah, a lot of lava on the crater floor. Have not seen a report of how much percentage, not that that matters that much, and not that it's necessarily very accurate to just eyeball it and guess the nearest 10% anyways. Still, you can, a lot of the crater floor got covered in this eruption. So coming to the reverse angle, the B1 camera, and focus just on this main phase of the episode. Here's a lava flow coming across, northern branch, southern branch splits off the crater wall here at the end and leaves this big lobe somewhere right there. And the north flow comes all the way around to somewhere in here. Maybe not quite that far, maybe somewhere in there, something like that. Right? So there is a chunk of the northeast part of the crater here and the eastern very edge that does not get covered, which looks a lot smaller from the other side, but from this closer camera, you can see it's actually a sizable area as well. Okay, so that's the flow itself. A couple of final things here. Let's look at the actual movement of the ground. So if you have not joined us for this exercise in the past, we take 1 inch at noon of each day since the last episode and compare those views for changes occurring. So there you can see, for example, the location of this new flow coming across here, how we're lapping on, see how much of this ramp on the south side has been covered by this new flow. So it all looks so small from the rim, but these are massive flows. They can be pretty thick. Look at all that area it's covering down in here. 9 million cubic meters coming out. There's that flow in the center here, and one around the north. But really the highlight of this particular image is if I come right to this area right in here. And so I'm going to point out the flow is coming into place right around here, right? And that's a huge thickness of lava that's coming over top of what I pointed out might be a fairly thin crust that's still leaking heat. So if you start looking more closely right in here, you can see this whole area actually seems to bulge upwards as this flow approaches, right? So this flow comes close. Maybe its weight is pushing the lava below the crust and causing this area that's fairly thin to be able to bulge upwards. No breakouts, nothing leaked out there apparently, but you can see this little movement here from this camera, which means it must be pretty big to be seen from this distance from a camera sitting on the ground, right? So really fascinating to see that little bulging happening there. Fairly minor compared to what we've seen in the past. In the past, we've seen injections of lava underneath this crust and bigger bulges and oozes and things like that. So perhaps because this flow did not come any closer than it did not force the lava out of here. And it kind of just was able to just roll on the bed and nothing actually squirted out. And the same exercise from the other side, from the KW camera, one image at noon each day since the last episode. And looking at the near vent area, you can see a lot of changes happening there. You can actually see a lot of growth, right? There's a lot more material here at the very end frame than there was at the very beginning frame. I'm trying to outline the end of it, how big it actually gets. You can see there's a lot of material accumulating, especially in this western part near the vents, and in this big ramp, and before it moves all the way across the crater. So you can see here during the previous week that last episode 33 products still slumping and moving under their own weight, and over top of that, still ductile, hot lava beneath it. And that's what we're starting to see again today following episode 34. So we're seeing the pre-34 and then a little bit of the post-34 coming here afterwards. And otherwise, if we look around, you can see a little bit of sagging in the central area in here. That's likely the flow that was gas-rich, losing gas and settling down and just like losing some volume from gas release, but basically sitting in place and very localized. I don't see that happening elsewhere. It does not seem to be related to this slumping movement here. They're really fascinating, right? If you look at this, looks almost like a mud flow coming across here, but this is happening in slow motion. This is about 10 days worth of movement here you're seeing all sped up together. So that stuff really fascinates me. Can keep watching those changes even between episodes of how things move around on the crater floor. But that's where we sit today between episodes and checking in on just one camera today. This is a V3 camera. Looking on it live, you can see that passive degassing happening from both the north and south vents, and a little bit on the flow field further down as well. So those are our first rounds of observations. We'll do a second round here with Lou in a little bit. But I will shift to our monitoring data now and show you guys some of the sequence. We had back on the 29th, the first reports of glow and 9 overflows from the north vent. Then moving on, we had from the Tuesday update, they noted over 200 gas piston cycles, each lasting 2 to 10 minutes. And there were more than 100 overflows produced, mostly just before midnight on the 29th. They slowed down with 10 more overflows since midnight, and continuing glow from both of those areas. Keep it moving here to the Wednesday status report, when I note that as those overflows continued, they still saw glow from both vents. They actually noted that the glow from the south vent, let's see if I can find this here, but that as there was glow from the south vent, they expected potential effusion from the south vent as well, which did end up happening through that high fountain. So this was 12:30 a.m. as they're noting the beginning of that continuous fountaining. And then with the onset at 12:53, we have the issuance of the notice for aviation that we call the VONA, and the paired volcano notice that these always come together, noting the onset of episode 34 at 12:53 a.m. with the initial fountains from north vent up over 330 feet or 100 meters high. And this is before the south vent opened up. We had the north vent opening at 12:53. The south vent opened at 1:45, about an hour-ish later. Now we can capture that here on the next pair of USGS notices, the VONA and the VAN, noting the end of the episode 34 at 7:03 a.m. Hawaiian time. The south vent went almost the entire length once it activated until 7 a.m. itself, with the south vent reaching 1,300 feet, 400 meters during the episode, and generating approximately 8.9 million cubic yards. This later gets noted as 9, so I'm not sure if this is just rounding or revision of the data, but that is the announcement at the end there, the VONA and the VAN here. And since then, we've had the update yesterday, noting that everything was still slowly recovering, more than a week away. And as we said in our summary up top today, no new information since yesterday. We're still waiting for more data from the monitoring network to have a better estimate, but we are seeing the resumption of inflation as we've seen the previous 33 times, right? So there we go, 34 times. All right, so to round out our monitoring data, let's walk through our charts here. So there is our elevation showing the fountain blocking the laser, then an actual resulting flow that was accumulated in that area where the laser is pointing. You can see this is about 1,000, call it 1,001 to make it easy. Let's call it 1,001, and then maybe 1,005. So you're looking at 3.5, 4 meters, maybe 10 feet or so of thickness accumulated at this one spot. And then you have another 2 meters or 1.5 meters of maybe the slumping, bringing more material over top of this area and making it slightly thicker over the last day or so since the eruption episode has ended. And there is the tilt drop at the summit, corresponding to the release of pressure from episode 34 and the recovery that has occurred thus far at the summit. On the rift zone, nothing is happening. This green line shows a tilt from Pu'o'o, which is still completely unaffected, just contracting, no effect on the East Rift Zone from the current activity. Earthquakes are low. I won't really go into the details there of the earthquakes, but you can see they're low, low counts. Not a lot of big patterns still occurring under the summit and flank and over the hotspot feeder zone. For the last month, we can see the same pattern of accumulation of lava that we just pointed out compared to the previous episode where we saw more of that fountain blocking, and then we saw also some of the slumping movement of elevation in the days that followed the episode as well. So this can happen for many days afterwards as a movement continues. And in the context of the last month, there is our more recent tilt drop. You can see it was bigger than the last one, even though we had a shorter duration. So it's steeper, faster, more efficient in getting the lava out. That's in East Rift. This is a station at Sand Hill, just to the southwest of the summit with 2 components. And you can see there that they are in sync again as well. Okay, for the month, earthquake counts are still within a background range. That's the background average right there. And their depth versus time, you can see a little bit more of that pattern, which is, and I will not highlight anything on that today. 3-month tilt, the same pattern repeated further. And since the onset, you can see there's all 34 of those shark fins, each one of which is the build up to an episode and then the release through the fountaining phase. Lava depth continues to step upwards over time. And there it is. Earthquake counts overall in the context of the last year per week are low ever since the onset eruption began in late December. Right around there. GPS, the summit is still moving like an accordion, stretching out between episodes and then contracting during them. So there you see the tracking of the stretching and then the contraction that happened in the days since then. This scale is about 12 centimeters or so. Right? That's 10 from there to there, and there's maybe another 2. And 12 centimeters, you're looking at, what is that, 4 or 5 inches? Just accordioning back and forth as it pressurizes, releases, pressurizes, and releases. So all that's established and pretty normal. You can see the long-term stretching north and south across Caldera. It is getting longer. But even as this is happening, the rims are settling still, showing that we're just really getting lava out and wiggling the bits around it, right? More so than bulging it outwards. Right. At Pu'o'o, our data is still offline, but as we saw from the tilt, nothing to worry about there. So we'll stop at the year-long time frame there. And the last thing I'll show you guys here with this monitoring data itself, before I show you some of the graphs that result, is we do have an INSAR image from the Mountains Project. The Mountains Project is automatically collecting satellite data from all over the world, many volcanoes, and compile this information. So Here we're seeing a bullseye of deflation. This is captured on October 1st for the previous 6 days. So just after the episode ends. So it's mostly capturing the exhale, the deflation of the volcano. And so what we really can tell is that the center of the magma reservoir that was feeding this was right there in the eastern part, right? So really good bullseye. And look at how well this matches up to the actual caldera. On the north side first, caldera walls are very easily pointed out through these big cliffs. Coming to the south, it's a little more subtle, but that's the actual edge of the caldera there, marked by those faults there and there and there, something like that. That's really caldera, something like that. And look, pretty good match as far as the deflation source. Of side note, there's a smaller signal over here. This looks like, if you look at it like an inflation, like maybe there was some kind of net gain in this area. We've seen this before when pressure builds especially high, and especially when we have interaction of Mauna Loa and Kilauea, Mauna Loa pushing back, allowing Kilauea's push this way to cause some buildup in this area, we'll say, right? And so this is all still a little bit nebulous and unclear, but it is worth noting that that seems to be a signal. And if you look down at this corner, it seems to be an even steeper gradient ramping up to it right there. So we've noted some curiosities in this area before, not the main reservoir here, but you would imagine that as events are somewhere over here, there is some pathway, right, that maybe there's some effect that happens further over as well. All right. Our timeline from the USGS is not useful because of the lapse in appropriations, but we did have the data from the reports. So here are maximum heights from Kilauea, maximum mountain heights we pointed out before. And context from Pohoiki. We have had in the past windows where there were a series of lower fountains, and then it resumed back up again. So we're building our own pattern by now, 34 episodes in, of Kilauea Summit 2024-25, that the comparisons don't really hold very closely anymore, but we can still look to see what the past can inform us about what might come in the future here. So that's the fountain heights. We noted this extra high value for 34 above everything else we've seen. Going back to the Pu'u'u era, there were a couple of those. Episode 26 seemed to really jump up from the previous pattern. 38 is also highlighted here as well. So we'll see. We seem to still be well in the heart of this thing, and no sign of it slowing down or coming down like you saw at the end phases of Pu'u'u. Not yet. Volumes, similar, 9 million, this one at 34, but also for 32. These are some of the highest values, but you can note that it wasn't twice as high, it was the same amount, and that's why we had to have that shorter duration. As you can see here, from the Pu'u'u era, the change in trend of volume was pretty subtle, and it's hard to really pull anything out of that, although they did see a decline, did seem to see a decline here towards the end, which we're not seeing yet either. So higher rate, same volume, equates to a shorter duration at 6 hours, about half of our recent average. And for comparison, at Pu'u'u, this more variable phase that we're seeing here was part of this early phase of the Pu'u'u, not so much at the end where it was way steadier and more even for maybe 10 episodes in a row or close to that, right? We had this phase here when we pointed out 36 and 38 of extra high eruption rates for Pu'u'u, and you can see in that same era, we're seeing a similar variation of duration as well. So, and the last thing with the graphs is the lengths of the pauses in between. So leading up to this, did it take less time to charge up? Well, a little bit. We did have a little under 12 days here, not as long as our 16 that we've had, 3 of those out of the last 5. This is closer to episode 32. It's still, it's nothing really obvious that's different there that would lead to an extra high volume of lava coming out this time. Right? So really fascinating. And there's a pause length for Pu'u'u. They had these variability as well, somewhere in the middle part of their phases as well. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up with earthquakes very quickly here. Over the last week, here are the earthquakes on the island. We still have a little bit of a cluster that preceded the episode at the summit. And if anything, maybe this is what can give us some clue of the pressure that led to this high fountain, was that we had a buildup of earthquakes over the last couple of weeks, last month under the summit, more so than we've seen over previous months. But otherwise, earthquakes are pretty quiet and normal. That's the distribution as we expect. Let me come down here and change my settings to show you guys earthquake colors by depth. There, maybe. I think I got there we go. So the blue ones are deeper, the red ones and oranges are shallower. Some settling earthquakes out deep under Mauna Kea up to the north. And for looking at them for size, here they are over the last week, 3.4, 3.3, down in this deep Pahala zone. So not related to a current eruption. All right. That went longer than I thought, but I'll pass it to you guys there.
All right. Thank you, Phil. I will go ahead and bring in Lou, and we can go through what he has, probably kind of quickly at this point. All right.
Hey. How you doing?
All right.
All right. Well, that was quite the update there, wasn't it? Nice
Yes,
work.
sir.
Nice work. All right. Well, I have some boots on the ground stuff. Episode 34. Oh, I have Dano tonight. Welcome back to our ASL interpreters, by the way. Nice to have you here. Episode 34 was a busy one. I got some video from boots on the ground. A lot of our viewers were up there and from all over the country came in, and I was looking for some different footage. And here's a shot coming up from Kau. Right there, I'll go and roll that. And just to give an idea of how bright, how everybody always asks, where can you view this from? Pretty much everywhere. We were seeing glows down the slope. I'm at about 900 feet. HPP was checking in during the eruption, and they could see a glow from down there. It was all over on this episode. Here's another shot. You can see from the parking lot. You wouldn't even have to get out of your car if you couldn't. There's a nice shot of the plume that was putting off. You showed the Pele's hair, and during the morning, I was getting messages in our live stream about those all through Ocean View that were concerned because they were seeing a lot of Pele's hair down there, more than normal. There's another shot. Give it with the audio. Everybody asked, what's it sound like? There it was. Another viewing area with a cell phone. You don't have to have a $30,000 camera and lens.
Yeah, lots of wind in that last one, too.
Yeah.
I always hear the wind.
That's another thing. It's going to be wind mixed in all the time, unless you have the mic system. That's the actual roar right there. There was something common among a lot of these videos I was watching, is that there were people coughing up there, whether it might have been from an illness. I think it was more just on air quality. We talk about PPE. It's not a bad idea to just pack an N95, even if you don't use it. It's good to have with you. Check out the shot here.
It's important to remember that the N95 is not for SO2, just for particulate matter.
Right. Yep.
For SO2, you need something a lot bigger. You can get it, but it's a lot bigger. Yeah, it's amazing, that fountain. That must have been early, huh?
Yeah. Yep.
That incline fountain. Lava that it put out was, fast and furious, though.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I thought this was, impressive, and then the second vent opened.
Yeah, once that south vent opened up, it was pretty much game on for flow. And
it makes sense, though, that it didn't last 12 hours. How much it was putting out.
Mm-hmm. I could tell by the videos that were coming in and the conversations how tired people were at this episode, because they had been there for 24, 36 hours with all the pistoning that was going on and all the overflows that were happening. I really did start to get a sense of fatigue out of those that were going to watch this time around.
Right.
We're used to our professional photographers up there. They're battling it out. They're used to this. But the visitors, for the first time, to try to spend 24, 36 hours up there, and it's tough.
Yeah, foggy conditions, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of my first comments, was like, I was like, the wind direction sucks. And then I looked at it a little more. I'm like, actually, there is no wind.
None.
It's just sitting there.
Yeah.
At least early on.
Mm-hmm.
But you know how high it is. There's might not be wind at the surface, but 1,500 feet up,
Yeah.
wind.
Yeah.
Carry it all the way to ocean view.
And we get so many.
They're saying that had lots of grid on this truck in ocean view.
Yeah. Wow.
In the comments.
And that's a problem for Ocean View. They're kind of like Lower Puna. You know, a lot of people don't have perfectly sealed homes, and that might be a problem. And we have big fountains like that in the future. Have to check our gutters. That shot over the side. There it is. And one last shot here. Not only is the SO2, the VOG up there, a hazard. Watch where you walk at night. There are spider webs. I'm not a fan of spiders.
Not even an arachnophobia warning, Lou. Not even a
heads up.
Heads up, there's a spider. Fast forward on the live stream.
Yep. So there you go. There is our boots on the ground segment. How's that?
All right. Looks good. Yeah,
thank you to all those that contributed, all the videos and images. Appreciate that.
All right. Well, yeah, that's the. You know, we had more people on Hawaii Tracker. We didn't get to highlight those. We have a bunch of people submitting video and footage and various media over there. We have reports of parking being exceptionally bad during this one. People seem like they're taking advantage of the lack of enforcement and just parking wherever they felt like it, including the middle of the road.
Yep.
So
heard that.
Just be aware. What can you do?
So you're saying parking in the middle of the road is not good?
Usually.
Okay.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and bring up some stuff on Pohoiki. How about?
Let's do it.
All right. Drop this off and add this, and there we go. All right. So this is just the last week of footage, night and day. Just wanted to show how much work is getting done and how long they're going during this phase, because this week has really been gangbusters down there. Working, I think, every day. There might be one day off in there, but really the amount of progress that they're making is impressive. The water, the ocean has been pretty calm, though I have seen a few waves roll through. Talk about those more in a minute, but just showing the progress here and steady progress. That one excavator out there just putting in as much work on its last legs. Like, that thing is a beat up piece of equipment, but it just keeps going. You should hear it when it moves. It is the loudest thing I have ever heard just for an excavator moving. So that's that. We're now into Tuesday. This one ends on Tuesday. We can see all of the. Oh, whoops. All right, so now we have work days over the past 2 weeks. This is really since the start of work really reactivated with the preparations for removing that berm. right? Removing that levee that separates the boat ramp from the open ocean. And we see the last time that the crane was attempted to be used, and it was found that it really isn't going to work in this project. So it's the excavators, and mostly it's going to be this yellow excavator that ends up taking over and doing the majority of the work happening down there. So one operator with one piece of machinery really, putting it in down there. So it's pretty cool to see all this progress and to see that inlet open more and more. All right. I do have a little drone video. This was taken last week on Friday. And thanks to Pohaku Pele Maka for providing me with the drone to fly, because we did not have one and they did not have a pilot for it. So it worked out great. Be able to get up there and get some, cool little shots of the whole area and the progress that they're making. They're really taking out a bunch of material from the bottom, and there's so much rock in there mixed in. It's kind of amazing how much of it is rock. It gives the illusion of being a lot of sand, but there is so much rock underneath and mixed in and on top near the shorelines. Just giving that 360 or more like a 180 view of this whole area. Pretty cool area, with the developments that are going on, just to be able to be a part of it, right? Because this is a closed area, but we've been granted access to go do these types of documents and to document the progress. And we also have our webcam. That's where those time lapses came from. That's available at hveri.org/Pohoiki. It takes an image every 5 minutes and puts it up on the website. So if you want to try and keep up with what's happening out there, that's the best place to do it right now. And you can see out in the back on the top left, the very top left, you can see all of the dust being kicked up from the work ongoing on Highway 137, the Red Road, restoring that. So we have the two projects happening simultaneously beside each other. There was supposed to be 3, but the park reconstruction has not got underway yet. Moving on, we did have a blessing this morning down there at Pohoiki. I was able to be a part of with all of the crew and Leila Kīlauea from Pohaku Pele Maka doing the blessing the equipment, but also all the personnel that working down there. And we can see members of Goodfellows, and I'm not sure what the other company is from Oahu, the actual marine engineers or the marine operators rather. And this was just from the perspective this morning from the breakwater, really looking out at that progress.
What a change.
Yeah, right. It's really opened up. I was thinking like they might be getting close to halfway of getting this thing removed. But I did want to show this is all. It's interesting because the exposed rocks are really close to the opening, but back here the sand is still sandy, which is, probably going to change over time, but that's where it is right now. And just really calm and mellow and quiet down there. And finally, I just wanted to show a little bit of this erosion that is already taking place down there on this left side. You can see the sand and the rock. The sand getting washed out, leaving the rock, taking away even more of the sand. So that sand's going somewhere. This thing's ever changing. And right now you can see how calm it is, but there was a set of waves that came through, one single or a 3-wave set, and maybe 3 to 4 feet. And man, that break is going to be back. I can just tell after seeing that one wave, I'm like, get this thing open, and that break is back. It's not going to be. It's going to be cramped. I'll tell you that. It used to be you'd have like 4 places down there, maybe 5, depending how good you were, that you could paddle into and catch some waves. It's going to be 1, but it's going to be a decent ride.
That's good.
A short ride, more straight than getting good barrels, but
right.
It's rideable. It's totally rideable. And I think that does it for my Pohoiki update. Lots going on down there.
Yeah.
There's the webcam.
Progress.
.org/Pohoiki for the near real time camera of the whole area. Sometimes it's real time, but it's near real time.
Close enough.
Close enough for government work. All right, so let's go ahead and fire up Community Corner.
All right. There we go. All right, let's do this. Who we got tonight? Carrie, how you doing? All right. A lot going on in the park, kind of. And, with not the episode is over, so everything should slow down, but just know there are still rules in the park to follow, and there are still things that are hazards out there. Even though there may not be anybody to tell you to stay off some of these trails, they are still closed. The wasps are still there. Somebody asked me what they looked like, so I pulled this old photo here of a wasp on a blossom. Check that out. Don't touch them. Don't disturb them. They don't want you. All right, here's that shot from one of our viewers. Kind of a little bit of a flow back there. Dane, can I call that a flow?
Yeah, that's a flow.
All right,
it counts. It's a baby flow, but it's a flow.
Here's another shot of both the fountains. Spectacular sight. In case you don't know how to get to the Welcome Center, which is probably closed, it is all the way up there, but there are restrooms back behind it, and there's parking behind the new HVO building that's being built. It's a good place to park. There's a shot that Yvonne sent me of the progress of the HVO building next to KMC. It's a really nice building. Last time I saw it, it was still just concrete walls. They definitely stepped it up. And there's a shot from the road of KMC, so you kind of know where you're going. As soon as you see that flag, hook a right, and parking is on your left or anywhere you can find it around there. This is back behind the Kilauea Visitor Center. They were still working up until yesterday-ish behind there. So they're making progress. It's on the side. This is where the bathrooms were at right there. There are your viewing areas like we were showing in the videos. There are viewing areas everywhere, whether it's coming up from South Point or in the parking lot in your car. You can't go wrong anywhere. There's some shots. And remember, bring your own water. I see you smiling. Come on, let me have it. Yes? No? I can't hear you.
Every week there's a new one. Huh?
Every week. One of these weeks you're not going to see this warning label up here. I'll get it.
You're training your dogs in the back.
I'm working her. She's smart. She's going to figure this out. This was actually, I told the AI to give me a pair of boxer dogs. And for some reason, it kind of, if you can see the face on them, they've got boxer faces, but the rest of them isn't quite a boxer. So bring your own water to the park. Limited options up there right now. I also wanted to talk about this. This is from one of our viewers. She took a picture of her arm while she was up there, and it's a good time to bring up exposure. We talk about SO2 up there, how the hazards of that, but there are other hazards, and exposure is one of them. From just being in the park for a day, you should wear sunscreen, wear a hat, plenty of water. Be mindful that you are at a summit. You are exposed up there at 4,000 feet, and you don't realize it until it's too late. Windburn is a real thing. It happens up there. Dehydration and sunburn as well. So pay attention. Bring the things you need to be prepared. There's a shot of the bathrooms. They are still open. I got confirmation this morning that the bathrooms are open. This is the one up at the old Jagger Museum area. No filling station there for water. No filling station for water. Closures are still closed just because there's no personnel walking around. Those areas are still off limits. And Dane talked about parking, and I'm going to remind you about safety and parking. Less enforcement means more opportunities. So hide your valuables in your trunk or keep them with you, or don't even take them to the park. Don't like to say that, but it is what it is up there. I'm glad that our ASL interpreters are here, because I had this last week, and the Deaf Advisory Board is being formed. If you care about accessibility, cultural preservation, and community connection, your voice is needed. Scan that QR code, or you can see the email address down there and contact them if you are interested in helping out. They're building a deaf digital resource library. October comes up here, and we have the first Saturday of the month. The Tsunami Museum is opened up for free admission for Hawaii residents on October 4th from 10 to 2. Learn nature's warning signs and Hawaii's tsunami history. They got live music by Bert Jackson down there. Bring your ohana for a fun Saturday of learning, music, and community. Check out the Pacific Tsunami Museum. We've had some situations here, some warnings in the last several weeks, so it's a good idea to get down there and get a little fresh education. And Dane talked about the Pohoiki boat ramp, hveri.org/Pohoiki. You can check out our webcam, free to use with credit to Hawaiian Volcano Education and Resilience Institute. That is us. And we are kicking off our fall fundraiser. We've seen you guys donating here into YouTube. We appreciate that. That is part of our fundraising program. You can also donate to us over on our platform at hveri.org/donate. The funds go to help our volcano education program, our live streams here, our AI and digital resilience training, youth leadership programs, and your gift helps build a safer, smarter, more connected communities. And you can sign up for our email alert list. Dane was up bright and early at 1 a.m. What time did you send out that alert? 1? I was right behind you, and you'd already getting it out.
Yep, it was in there. I mean, it was watching that precursor activity for an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Just knowing that this is the episode, being like, but this don't count yet. It don't count yet. Right. I'm waiting for the thing. And then it bubbled up, and you're like, all right, that's the thing.
Yeah, that's it. This one took us 24 hours of steady watching, didn't it?
Right. Yeah.
There we go, Ding.
Yeah, thank everybody for tuning in today, but also want to thank the VIVI grant program through the County of Hawaii for helping fund this program, as well as county support for our digital resilience and youth development programs. It really helps us be able to maintain this and continue what we do in the various aspects. Go ahead and roll the thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we did have a bunch of donations come through, mostly over on the our donation platform. And we appreciate everybody there. So we had Norm, longtime supporter, with a $20 donation. We had Colby coming in with also a $20. Appreciate the support there. David P. with a $50 donation. Awesome. Thank you, David. Martha coming in with a $50 as well. Appreciate it. The support over on the hveri.org/donate. And we have also another one from Norm for $20. Mark Hardman coming in with a $50. Appreciate the support there. Skyfield Ed, longtime supporter, $50. And then Raven with a $10 donation. We're not done yet because Edith came through with a $25. And finally, we have Colby again with a $10 donation. So appreciate all the support over there. Whew. All right.
Hey, I got one more thing here. Let me drop this real quick. And I wanted to say part of our fundraising goes to our youth development program, our science nights. All of us were out last night. I got a shot in there of our volunteers, Anna and Yvonne. We also showcased our AI presentation as well. And those of you that have sent me a request to be a volunteer, you'll be getting an email from me back. We'd love to have you if you'd like to join us and volunteer at any of our science nights or any of our outreach events. Get a hold of me.
All right. Thank you, Lou. And we will get Phil back in here and start up our section on the Napau eruption. All right.
Dano, we appreciate you guys.
I don't carry. I'm not sure if you plan on staying for this. And know that you had to get going at 6:30, and at this point, this is not getting done by 10. So we are switching segments into our special presentation. Just so you know. All right. So let's dive into it. Eruption. So Napau eruption, right? We're tracking activity, inflation in the upper East Drift Zone, but really it wasn't until September 14th when the intrusion took place. And we see here the INSAR showing the dike opening and intruding into the area near Makoku crater. And this was really when the warning signs went up. But it was kind of a weird eruption. I felt like we didn't have good notifications on this one that anything was happening. And we'll talk about that. I have the volcano watch at the end. But really, it was in the night of the 15th, in the dark, that the eruption took place. And we didn't really put anything out in terms of, nobody did, because nobody could see it. Nobody could confirm that any eruption was really taking place until the next morning. All right, so I have some clips here lined up from USGS. Let's go ahead and just dive into those. So this was on the morning of the 15th when weather lifted and they were able to get in there and see what had occurred overnight. We can see that these couple areas of fissures without producing a significant lava flow had opened and were degassing still. Lots of degassing taking on, but you can see Napau crater over to the left there. What were you thinking at this point, Phil, in this whole sequence? Because you were up there and you smelt it that night, but it wasn't until the morning that we were able to get that confirmation.
Yeah, it was really interesting. We had seismic swarms, a few of them for a few months before that, and so this one didn't seem like it was going to be any different necessarily until we had that smell, and then we were just waiting for the cameras to come on, right? And yeah, I think at the time we were all fairly worried about what this might mean as far as return of magma to the East Rift, what it might come to next. Would it erupt here? Would it for a long time? Could it be the ocean? All those questions were things we were getting asked. But as we now, that was just a one-off event in the rift.
All right. Well, Phil, I think
you guys still hear me?
your
like
internet. No, I think you're gone at this point.
I'll come back in later if I can.
Go ahead. We'll go ahead and bring in Lou to help me commentate this, and we're going to go through what we have available. This was, we talked about being spoiled by the lava stadium and being able to have all of these views. Napau was the opposite of that. We had very little access, very little viewing, very little happening that besides what USGS was putting out to go off of. So here was a second part of that overflight, a little bit closer to the eruption site, just looking down to see what the extent of it is. You can see all the toasted ohia trees, some rather hefty ones in there that were killed in this eruption. In that first stage of the eruption, the trees are going to take more losses as this progresses. So where you remember this whole part of this, Lou?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Like it's happening. All right. So moving on, we can look at the map of the area. We can see those two lava pads. Not much lava put out, but that's how these episodes usually start, is the beginning is the very low compared to what's coming next, right? And it might take a day or two or a week or more while it escalates into finally, the accumulation, the pinnacle, whatever you want to call it, the highest point of that eruption. But right now we're just in the beginning of it. So they were able to get down there on the 17th and begin taking samples. Eruption continued to progress. Sorry. So the next morning, that's the beginning of this whole thing, right? There was a 480 meter long fissure, and it covered about 4 acres with 5 million gallons of lava erupted. And then we get into the 16th and the 17th. We detect that the eruption has resumed, but it's still that, sporadic activity. And they taking samples, because the way that USGS does their modeling now, we found this out recently, is that a lot of the models that they use take parameters that require you to go take fresh lava samples to be able to add the input to the models to be able to have them run even, as accurately as possible. Moving on a little bit to this flyover, which one? Let's just check the date time on this. Oh, is it at the back? Oh, they didn't put it on this one. Okay, so this one I believe is also the 17th. I'll need to.
I'm curious where they landed, and if they had how far
this
out.
Is the 17th.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can see all the craters, but off to the left there's that degassing and all those emissions from those eruptive vents. And we come down and we see that the eruption has shifted. We are now inside the crater itself with the activity. So we see those 2 pads from the previous start of the eruption, as well as new fissures that had opened up beside them and then extended all the way down across the crater floor and are still active at this point with a fissure eruption in Napau crater. Go ahead and skip forward a little bit. This is a hefty overflight. You can see the degassing extends almost all the way across the crater floor, but the fissures are located over on that western side, as well as those fissures that extend up over the edge of the crater and a little bit running Malka. Just one more shot, a little bit lower this time, looking at those fissures in the bottom on the 17th. So at this point, the fissures are about a mile long, 1.6 kilometers, and have covered roughly 44 acres. The fountains aren't much to write home about, especially with the fountains that we've been spoiled with lately. Mm-hmm. But you can see that it is producing a rather fat lava flow, starting to try and cover the floor of the Napau crater, but that is a rather significant feature to try and fill. All right.
From the air, you really get a good idea how big that crater is down there.
Right. You can see also just the scale.
Mm-hmm.
So you put it up here and you can see that this is maybe 1,000 yards across. So 10 football fields, maybe more or less, ballpark. And we see the previous vents and the inactive fissures from the past 3 days at this point on this map released on the 18th. All right. Thank you, Carrie and Dano, for sticking with us tonight.
Thank you.
And we will hopefully be done not too long. All right. So, and then we saw the solidified lava pad, as well as the lava leaking out of the edges of the perimeter, those overflows that you can see, this little hot spot that probably was a breakout that occurred when they were able to capture this image. All right. So now I believe we are into the 18th. Whoops. Let me just double check. Whoops. Oh, this is on the 19th. So we're moving a little bit further on in this, and we are no longer erupting inside the inside the crater, but activity has moved back up where the inactive fissures from the previous parts of this eruption had opened up, and now we have this lava flow, this channelized lava flow that is traveling down and then over the crater's edge back into Napau. but creating this lava fall, which is a really, cool feature to when you get a chance. That's been one of the things I've wanted the most out of these episodic eruptions. Kilauea Summit is please just start at the top and then create a river that flows over the caldera edge back in. It's happened before. I'm sure Phil can tell you the dates that has happened, but it's one of the coolest things, right? And it's better when it happens somewhere, like inside the national park than something like when it happened at Kapoho at Green Lake and those lava falls. But you can also see looks like a fire started potentially over on that far edge. It's hard to say, but we do have some there.
The potential for a bigger fire was there. We got off pretty lucky on this one.
Yeah. One thing that people like, I know a lot of people just know it, but I do like to state it every once in a while. When you see this type of predominant winds and a long existing, I'm just going to go back and pause it. So predominant winds, and say this system lasts for, instead of days, say it lasts weeks. The entire time, the downwind section of the forest is being killed and dried. It'll be brown, not very long. Once that happens, then the chance for fire goes up dramatically. So we saw in 2018, fires started propagating in the last part of the eruption. And sometimes they were on the wet side, but they were overwhelmingly on that dry side and scorched large acreages with, brush fire, fast moving fires. Whereas the other side of the flow was mostly green, right? Didn't burn, had the same fires try and start, barely did anything. So that's just one thing to bring up with, fire risk in this types of eruption. When an eruption happens out in vegetated areas, we haven't seen that in about a year now with this ongoing, summit eruption. And this was really the first time we've had it, back in forested areas since 2018.
Your first video of the overflight showed how the ohia forest gets dried up pretty good,
right?
And
that was
just
just
too far.
That was just in the immediate vicinity, but we're talking large areas downwind will get nuked by that. All right, I don't know why that went black, but let's go ahead and move on. And now we have some footage taken by Mike Zowler from USGS at the eruptive site. So up on the a little bit Malka of Napau crater, where these fissures have reactivated. See, not very big fountains by local or recent measurements, but definitely producing some rather fast moving flows for the area. Let's take a look at those. Some lava flows. So this is the lava flowing off the edge down into Napau crater. See, that's a good amount of volume moving in there. It's not a little nothing. The beginning of the eruption, this amount of lava was not even close. But now at this point, yeah, that's a lava river making its way down. You got lava falls. It was a impressive bit of this eruption. Was this whole sequence right here into the September 18th, 19th, and by the 20th, the eruption had ended. I'll take a look at the map again of this on the 19th, and those inactive fissures, but also the lava fountains, and that lava falls into the crater, and then the Napau crater there, and the extent of it covering the floor. Oh, we got the majority of the floor covered during that whole eruption. And this was, we did get, wasn't there in the beginning, but S2 camera that now has a bag or something over it. I don't know what happened to that thing. But the S2 camera is a temporary deployable camera that they'll move around depending on where I need it. And I believe it was on the 18th. It might have been the 17th. This camera was able to be installed down at Napau. It had a terrible signal to it. Yeah. So we didn't get as much data out of it as maybe we wanted to, but we were able to get some time lapses out of the thing. So here it is on the 19th of those lava falls, but I want to just show some of the time lapse off that where we have this zoomed in at this point. And we can see here on the 17th that fountaining and the ending in the crater itself, picking back up. Can't decide where it wants to go before it ends up shifting back up the hill. And we see then those lava falls take over, and pretty cool right there. That whole sequence when it reopens and comes down. Would have been awesome to be there, have the drone up or something like that. And then it restarts in the night, right? You see it stop and restart. I want to just replay that because it's going. It's got two rivers, and then they fizzle out a little bit, and then it restarts, and it drops down through the forest again.
Yeah, pump faked us there, didn't it, that night?
Yeah, that was interesting. It was like we missed it too. Like we saw it, and then we're looking at it, and then it was back to where it was, and we played the time lapse the next morning. We're like, wait, what? It did came through a new spot. Okay, let's go ahead and move on. We also have a little bit further back, same time lapse. We'll just show that ending sequence part, and then it shuts off, and then restarts and produces that new little lava flow, and then it's back over in its normal spot. So it was really interesting. And then there were other cameras in play. This was the PW camera, but it is located a long ways away, and this is it zoomed in with good conditions. This is good conditions. When we had bad conditions, there was no light source at night. You couldn't see. It's like these black frames that occurred the night that it started. There was nothing like to be seen that night from any of the cameras. So it really was people's noses, and that's what we're going to talk about to end this. We'll look at the final map of the eruption site. We see the vast majority of Napau crater, the floor of it covered with lava flows, those fissures that extended by the end of the whole thing, still roughly about a mile, maybe a little more than that. And they're saying over 2/3 of the eruption or Napau crater covered, but yeah, large amount in there. And I did want to just talk about that night that it opened. There was a volcano watch. Let me get this to a reasonable zoom. So volcano watch, the nose, and eventually the HVO instrumentation knew too, but not in the beginning part of it. And they mentioned that the residents of the volcano community were the ones that really picked up. We had reports coming onto Hawaii Tracker at the time of people smelling SO2, smelling burning, smelling different stuff, but there was no confirmation. I remember Phil even mentioned something living up close to the volcano, but no confirmation until the next morning. But people were fairly confident in that it had to have been going just based on the smell alone. And we do get some reports on the gassing here. So it was very hard for them to get measurements of the gassing. They were only able to get back to getting gas measurements just because of the wind on certain days at certain points, just getting lucky, right? So they had gas emissions start off at roughly 2,000 tons per day, but they quickly picked up and eventually, reaching the point on the 19th with that when the lava falls and everything was happening of 30,000 tons per day, which is low compared to what we've been experiencing more recently. But it was, a rather important eruption, especially with it being the first eruption to occur on the East Rift Zone since the, crazy 2018 eruption that in the partial or the caldera collapse and everything went back into it. So we know that it's a long-term process to get back into the Rift Zone, especially the lower East Rift Zone, the recharging and eruptions at the summit. And we're seeing that process play out now, and hopefully it doesn't come back too far down the East Rift Zone anytime soon. You got anything else, Lou?
No, it's just that's kind of just as you were talking about. I was reliving that week how we were. I was in Kona all week. You guys came over for a night.
We were. It was
again, right?
Just a crazy time.
Mm-hmm. We were trying to coordinate updates, keep everybody informed. You guys went back. I stayed there in Kona. I was live streaming with you guys from the hotel room.
Those were some nice hotel rooms, though. I will
they
say.
weren't too bad. Yeah, it was Kona. It was Kona. Yeah, so that was kind of tough because we didn't have all the tools that we normally have to be able to update everybody and get everybody the information that they need. And we were really working without much. Mm-hmm.
On the road while attending conferences.
Right. Yeah.
It was crazy times. All right, well, let's go ahead and see if Phil's connection is stable and bring him back on, see if he has any thoughts about this whole thing. No, he's saying no connection. No connection. It's not good right now. But yeah, that's basically all we have lined up for this week. We can try and do some questions, see what we have here.
Just take a look here, see what I can answer.
So really let's start at the top and just see what we can do here. Is there more degassing now than when this first started? I assume that's 5:15, about the most recent episode. I am not sure. I would have to look at the measurements on that. Maybe we can get a thumbs up or thumbs down from Phil.
I'll give it a shot, but there's a rainstorm where I am, and it's messing with my signal here. So I'll say briefly, the amount of lava that comes out is proportional to the amount of gas that comes out. So more lava is coming out, more gas is coming out also. So yes, more lava is coming out, and there is more degassing during the episodes. In between, I don't know about that as much.
All right.
Need more data from the USGS.
That works.
Good question.
Walk asks, is the eruptive stream from the vent an abrasive? I keep thinking it's a fluid, but it's rock. I think we had a similar question last week.
Yes.
Yes.
It is abrasive. And extra abrasive because of the gas content, making all the pressure uneven within the flow. Yes. Keeping it brief here.
Raven asks, I noticed that the lava going into the crack and under the caldera floor, how long would it take for that lava to cool and then harden if more lava wasn't continuing under the floor? Seems like a Kilauea Iki analogy type of thing about how long it took to harden when it's insulated.
That's a trick question. That could be like a final question in a thermodynamics class right there, because there's a lot of other stuff going on, right? Normally things, it all depends on what's the ambient temperature of the rock around it, how fast it'll cool to that ambient temperature. So in the caldera, where there's all this like lava flows, it's kind of it's really messy. If you were having a dike intruding into an area, let's say it's a meter wide, and I don't know, like super long and super deep, and then that meter wide is the most important thing as far as it cooling down. That usually takes decades for it to cool back to normal temperature. Now, if you're talking about harden and solidify, that's a little bit faster for sure, because of the cooling point, the melting point, solid point is a little higher than that. So.
All right. Last one. US. When the south fountains were going way off V3 at its highest, tilt was at 0. Is that the highest V3 goes? Is the cam just too close to the south vents for the catch the fountains? And they also mentioned that the zoom was at 0. You know, at those new little numbers that they put in the bottom right of those cameras, it was at 0 and it was off screen. So to me, that would indicate, it's a little close for that big of a fountain.
Yeah, I think they also, we can tell when they wiggle the camera around, they're trying to catch the flow at the bottom of it also. So it's also like what they prioritize, they want to catch in the video. Right?
All right, good point. Do you have something there, Lou?
No, you were right on that, on the zoom on there. But it was good. I brought it up last week when the question was asked about that. And those cameras are zoomed as far out as they can go.
All right. And then we did have another donation come through, I believe. Colby's donation, was that one that you added since we did the readout?
No, that's already been there.
Okay,
We're
cool.
good. We got
Then I think
Colby.
we're done. We got through it all. There's a lot on the agenda tonight, and let me go ahead. We can wrap it up there, I think.
Yeah, we're good on my end.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in tonight. We will be back next Thursday, 5 p.m. Hawaii Standard Time, unless something unexpected happens. New episode, which we don't expect anyways. Wouldn't count for those updates. Check out Hawaii Tracker. Check out our new eruption alerts over on our hveri.org/subscribe if you want to be signed up for those. And yeah, for Philip Ong, and who's trapped in a rainstorm, Louis Torrey, I'm Dane DuPont. Aloha, everybody.